Hello students, very good morning to all. Today we will start with chapter 1, that is Advanced Web Designing. Chapter number 1, Advanced Web Designing. In Advanced Web Designing, we will see the introductory part of Advanced Web Designing. Introduction of Advanced Web Designing. Introduction of Advanced Web Designing. Now already we have seen the basic terminologies related to creation of web pages. We know that HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. HTML. HTML is an evolving language with different versions. HTML is an evolving language with different versions supporting different features. So we know that HTML is an evolving language. Okay, it supports different versions. Okay, different versions supporting different features. So various versions are different versions are different features. Now we are going for HTML5. HTML5. Now HTML5 is currently used. HTML5 is currently used because it supports mobile technology. Why we are using this HTML5 version? It supports mobile technology. That's why we are using HTML5 version. Okay? The major browsers which are required for or which supports for HTML5 are Google Chrome. Already we know Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Safari, Opera, and Apple. So supports these all browsers supports the features of HTML5. Okay, is it clear? Is it clear? Now we have seen introductory part of Advanced Web Designing. We have seen introduction of Advanced Web Designing. Now we will go for the next point, that is forms in HTML5. We will go for forms in HTML5. Forms in HTML5. So we will go for the next point, that is forms in HTML5. Now already we have studied the part of forms in standard 11. Previously we have studied in 11 forms. So till what we have studied? Till what we have studied? We have studied text, radio buttons, checkbox, submit, reset, select, and text area. All these we have studied in standard 11. Okay. Now we will go for the advanced part of forms in HTML5. Now already we have seen checkbox, radio button, submit, reset. Okay. So these are actually input controls. Those are all input controls. Previously we have used in our standard 11. Okay. So all those controls, radio, checkbox, submit, reset, and text area, these controls are used to collect different kinds of user inputs. Those who get text area, radio, checkbox, these controls are used for different user inputs, such as Now, with the help of text, what we can do? We can enter contact details like name, address, single or multiple from groups of options. Okay, so what we can do? A user can input. A user can input with the help of these input controls. Okay, from the group of options, as well as we can clear and we can submit the buttons. Reset, submit, clear. Okay, all these we have used previously in our standard 11. Now, this HTML5 has introduced additional form controls. So this HTML5, this version has introduced additional form controls which can also be used for validation purpose. Okay, so previously whatever the input controls we have used, those are not used for validation purpose. So this HTML5 it introduces some advanced input controls for validation purpose. Okay, so we will see the advanced input elements of HTML5. So we will go for advanced input elements. Advanced input elements. Now already I have told you that HTML5 introduces a number of new input types. HTML5 introduces a number of advanced input types. So we will see one by one all these input types and description of those input types. Input type, input type and description input type and description. So we will see one by one which are those input types and description of those input types. So the very first is input So the very first is input type is equal to input type is equal to color. The very first advanced input element is input type is equal to color. Description of this is it defines a color picker. Input type is input type is equal to color. Description is it defines a color picker. So what it will do? It will select or it will pick a color. It will input a color with the help of user input. It will pick a color with the help of user input. So user can input a color. A color picker will be there, and we can pick a color to input the data to the page. Okay, fine. So the very first is input type is equal to color. So we will see one by one. We will go for next. Next is input type is equal to number. Next input element is input type is equal to number. Input type is equal to number. So description of this is it defines a field for entering a number. So we can enter a number, we can input a number with the help of this input element. Input type is equal to number. So a user can input a number. So description is defines a field for entering a number. So a user can input a number with the help of this input type is equal to number. Okay, fine. So the next input element is input type is equal to input type is equal to URL input type is equal to URL. So what it will do? It will define a field for entering a URL, uniform resource locator. So we can enter a URL. A user can input a URL with the help of this input type is equal to URL, uniform resource locator. URL, its description is defines a field for entering a URL, uniform resource locator. Okay, fine. Next is input type is equal to image. Input type is equal to image. Description of this is it defines an image to a submit button. So what it will do? It will define a image button. To input a image button, it defines an image as a submit button. So in place of submit button, what we can do? We can define image. We can place an image. A user can input a image for inputting the data. Okay, for in the place of submit button. In place of submit button, a user can use an image. Okay, so this time this was an advanced input element. Okay, you can use in form controls. Input type is equal to image. Okay, fine. Next is input type. Input type is equal to email. Input type is equal to email. So description of this is it defines a field for an email address. A user can input an email address with the help of this input type is equal to email. Input type is equal to email. Description of this is it defines a field for an email address. An email address field is created and in that field we can input an email address. A user can input an email address. Okay, fine. Is it clear? Okay, fine. Is it clear? Now we will see some more input type elements, advanced input type elements, and next is input type is equal to month. Input type is equal to month. Input type is equal to month. Description is it defines a month and year control in format is year and month. It defines a month and year control in format is year and month. Okay, fine. Next is input type is equal to range. Input type is equal to range. This is also one of the another input type. Okay, advanced input element. And input type is equal to range. Description is define a range control. It defines a range control. So you can specify a range. A user can specify a range, and default range is from 0 to 100. By default, it is 0 to 100. Default range is 0 to 100. Or if you want, we can specify or we can define a range. We can define a range with the help of this input type. Input type is equal to range. Input type is equal to range. Okay. So we will go for next. We will go for next. Input type is equal to date time local. Input type is equal to date time local. Input type is equal to date time local. This was one of the input control input type which we can use in form for inputting the data. Description is defines a date picker. It will define a date picker that includes year, month, day and time. So it will define year, month, day and time. Year, month, day and time. So what it will do? It will define a date picker. It will define a date picker. Okay. That includes the year, month, day and time. Okay. Is it clear? Is it clear? Next input type is time. Input type is equal to time. Input type is equal to time. Description of this is it defines a control for entering a time. It defines a control for inputting a time. So a user can input a time with the help of this input type is equal to time. Okay, fine. So we will go for next. Input type is equal to week. Input type is equal to week. So this is also one of the input element which we can use for inputting in the form. A user can input in the form. Input type is equal to week. Description is defines a week and year control. It will define a week and year control. It defines a week and year control. It defines a week and year control. Okay, is it clear? Is it clear? So we will go for the next. Input type is equal to file. Input type is equal to file. Input type is equal to file. Description of this is it defines a file select field. What it will do? It will define a file select field and a browse button for file upload. So we can upload a file with the help of this. Input type is equal to file. Input type is equal to file. Description is it defines a file select field. It defines a file select field and a browse button for file uploading. So here we can upload a file with the help of this input type file is equal to type input type is equal to file. Okay, and we will go for next. We will go for next input. Input type is equal to tell. So the next input element or input type, advanced input element is input type is equal to tell. Input type is equal to tell. So description of this is, it is used to define fields. It is used to define fields. It is used to define fields So description of this input type is equal to tell is used to define input field, used to define input fields that should used to define input fields that should contain a telephone number. So this input type is equal to tell. Description of this is used to define input fields that should contain a telephone number. So here we can include a telephone number as an user input. A user can input telephone number with the help of this input type is equal to tell. Input type is equal to tell. Okay, fine. Yes, is it clear? So these are all advanced input elements. Advanced input elements which we can use as an input type. So these are all advanced input elements which we can use as an input type. Yes, okay, fine. Is it clear? Is it clear? Okay. So we will stop here only and we will meet in the next lecture.